Welcome back, class. Today's class is an intermediate course, but it can be taken concurrently with our beginner's course. AKA, if you've already been to Seoul and done all of those must-do things that we mentioned in the first video, awesome. This is a list of additional things that you can see around Seoul or even suggestions on outside of Seoul for you to add on for your second trip to Korea. Or if you're looking for additional things to add to your itinerary because your trip to Korea is longer than a week and you want to bulk it up a little bit more than just those 20 plus things that we mentioned in the first video, this is the list for you. Let's go. So in the first video, we talked about visiting Gyeongbokgung, which is one of the biggest palaces in Seoul. And that is one of the must-do things when you visit Seoul for the first time ever. But there are 4 other palaces within Seoul. If you have the time or you want to do something different the second time around, I would highly encourage you to visit those other palaces as well. I personally haven't visited all of them, so I can't tell you exactly which one is the best one to visit, but I did visit Cheondeokgun, and you might think it sounds familiar because I did mention it in our previous video during the fall tips section, because there is a secret garden within Cheondeokgun that is a separate tour, but it has a beautiful view of fall foliage. But the palace itself is actually the second biggest palace in Seoul, and parts of the palace were actually used in the filming for the drama Daejanggun, which was a really popular historical drama back in the 2000s. Another thing I would recommend if you have the time is to do a hanok stay. Hanok is a traditional Korean house, and you might think that that phrase sounds familiar too because around the palaces we have Bukchong Hanok village, and so that's actually where you're going to find a lot of these hanok stays within Seoul itself. There are a few other places that you can do hanok stays at outside of Seoul. We'll talk a little bit more about that later down in the list. But what's really cool about these hanok stays is you get to understand a little bit more about how people used to live back in the day. During the palace tours, they talk about like the floor heating that the palaces have. When you're staying at a hanok stay, you actually get to experience a little bit of that with the floor heating, and like that you get a better understanding of how all that mechanism works firsthand. The next on my list is not my favorite thing, but it is a thing that a lot of people like to do, and that is to visit museums. There's the National Museum of Korea, which is 3 stories tall, and it has a ton of exhibitions. What's really great about this museum is that it is actually free. When it's raining or if it's like really cold and you just want to stay indoors somewhere, this is a really great place to go to kind of kill time. The next one I personally haven't done, but it is a very common thing that is suggested for people's itineraries when they look into traveling in Korea, and that is to visit the DMZ, which is the demilitarized zone. From what I have heard, it is very interesting, but also can be very depressing, so you kind of have to be aware of that going in, but you will learn a lot about Korea's history from this as well. Okay, so moving on to lighter topics. Next one I would recommend is visiting Namdaemun. Namdaemun Market is a treasure cove. There's so much random stuff that you can buy there, and I mentioned it last time as a place that you could go to get traditional street food, but honestly Namdaemun is actually more known for its goods. I don't even know how to describe these type of goods because there's like a whole section for like pots, and then there's also like socks and hosiery. If you're looking for cheap luggage or bags, Namdaemun would be a really good place to go. I actually got a duffel bag from Namdaemun for like I think $30 US dollars. It's also one of the few places that I've actually seen children's clothing. There's this huge section in Namdaemun Market where there's like this whole building and whole street all just for children's clothing. From all of the places that I have shopped previously, if it wasn't like a department store, it's actually really hard to find children's clothing. So if you are traveling with children or you're trying to buy souvenirs for children, this is a really good place to go as well. Another market that you can check out while you are in Seoul that's not really traditional Korean food geared is Noryangjin. Noryangjin is known for its fresh fish, so this is a perfect place to go to eat sanakji, which is raw octopus. And the way that it is served is they have raw octopus tentacles and they chop it up into little bits, and then they immerse it in sesame oil and you dip it in a gochujang paste. The crazy thing about this, not for everyone either, is that because it's so fresh, the nerves are still kind of intact. So if you touch it with your chopstick or whatever, you can still see it's like squirming around. Like I said, it's not for everyone, but it's really cool. Just make sure that you chew really well before swallowing. Another really cool thing about the fish market is that when you're walking down the aisles, you can pick out the exact fish that you want cooked, and then you can go upstairs to the restaurant and have them serve the fish that you bought at the market. So it's really fresh, and they usually try to prepare the fish in a way that showcases how fresh the catch is. Those are a few markets that I didn't really go into detail with or talk a lot about in my last video that you can check out within Seoul. Another thing you can add to your itinerary in Seoul is to check out a noraebang. The noraebang culture is really big in Korea. It's just a good way for people to get together, drink, you know, have fun. There's two different recommendations I would give here. One is to check out the koinka, which is coin karaoke, and those are usually found within like arcades. It's like this telephone booth that can fit maybe like 2 to 3 people max, and you go in and you pay by song, and usually it's like, I don't remember how much it technically is. I think it's like 1,000 won for like 3 songs or something like that. The coin karaoke's are really fun because it's for those people who like, they don't want to rent a whole room for a whole hour. They just want to, you know, sing a few tunes and get it out of their system. It's also for like the smaller groups of people when you don't really have a lot of people to fill up a room. This is a great convenient way to de-stress. So the other suggestion that I have that's not coin karaoke is to go to Seoul noraebang. And why Seoul in particular? It is probably one of the most iconic karaoke places in Seoul. So you can find it at Hongdae. There's 2 branches in Hongdae. They both are themed. One of them is kind of like this dive bar-esque type vibe, and they have like a standing mic and everything inside the room, which is also pretty cool. The other one is the more iconic one, and that's the one where you can get a lofted room with these huge floor-to-ceiling windows that faces out to the streets of Hongdae. Another place that you can go with your friends if you are more of an adventurous seeker is to go to Lotte World or Everland. Everland is well known because a lot of dramas actually take place there. A lot of idol groups go there as like an outing during variety shows. Lotte World is also very well known. It is one of the largest indoor amusement parks. It's also another really great place to go if you are seeking refuge from the cold or from the rain. A thing that people really like to do when they go to visit these amusement parks is they like to dress up in school uniforms. So there are a lot of places that you can rent that from and go to the amusement parks, and then you can buy like the animal ears that they have. You can get all decked out and ready to have fun. I personally am not a big fan of amusement parks. I don't do roller coaster rides or anything like that, so that's why I personally haven't gone to those places. But I do know that it's a very iconic place for people to go, especially young adults. Okay, so last time we talked a bit about the different neighborhoods within Seoul where all of these places that I'm mentioning are located. Today's list is a little bit more scattered, but there are a few other neighborhoods that I want to point out that you can go, you know, adventure in, to discover new things in. One of them is Songsu. Songsu is an up-and-coming industrial area. If you are into cafe hopping or into that like industrial vibe, this is definitely the place for you. It's also where the Seoul Forest Park is, so it's a really great place to kind of just walk around and find hidden gems. If you are into the K-pop dance scene, this is also where 1 Million moved their headquarters to, and you can take classes there as well. Another district I would recommend exploring is Itaewon, which is Seoul's international district. It used to be the US Army military base, and so that's why there's a lot more foreigners in the area. You'll find a lot of different international cuisines there. You'll also find a really big nightlife scene there with a bunch of bars, pubs, and clubs. It is very saddening and unfortunate what had happened recently in Itaewon during Halloween. So I would highly encourage everyone who is going out, you know, to be aware of their surroundings and to make sure they're staying safe. And this is not just applying to Itaewon, but also to anywhere that they go out in. The nightlife in Itaewon really is on a whole different scale from any other place that I have visited. Especially to Hongdae. It's a very college town feel, so there are a lot of people, and then there is a lot of nightlife, so you will find a ton of people walking around at like 3 to 4 a.m. However, Itaewon is like intense because the streets are a lot smaller, and then there are so many small alleyways that people are just like very crowded. I guess maybe because it's a more diverse crowd and maybe a little bit more mature, but it's a different kind of rowdy. Once it gets to like 3 to 4 a.m., the main street is actually completely packed with taxis because all the public transportation is down, so there's really no other way for people to get home besides from taking taxis, and they know that. Now, Itaewon is also part of a larger district in Seoul called Yongsan, and that is the area south of the Namsan Park. This is the area where a lot of those museums are going to be. So like we mentioned before, the National Museum of Korea is there. There's the Eum Museum, which is like a contemporary art museum that's been really gaining traction and popularity recently. This is also the area where Hive Entertainment headquarters is, and I think they have a whole separate building called Hive Insight where you can go around and like purchase merchandise and stuff like that. So for all of those BTS fans and like TXT fans, that's a place that you can definitely visit when you are in Korea. Alright, so we talked a lot about different places in Seoul, but really if you have already been to Seoul previously, or you have a longer period of time within Korea, like I would say maybe 2 weeks upwards, I would highly recommend getting outside of the city. Seoul is such a metropolitan city that like you can find almost everything there, and that's including a lot of international stuff. If this is your first time visiting South Korea, your first landing base will most likely be Seoul, and there'll be a more gentle introduction to the culture. But if you have a longer time to spend in the country, then it would benefit you a lot more to spend it outside of this big city, because then you can actually get a better feel of the Korean culture itself. And you don't really realize how much the country has to offer until you get out of that like bubble. So one of the places I would recommend checking out is one that's actually been on my personal list to check out is Jeonju. It's about an hour south of Seoul, and it is known to be the birthplace of bibimbap, and it's also known for its hanok village. So this is one of those places that I would recommend you finding a hanok stay at if you are looking for that kind of thing to do. Another similar place that you can visit that has a really strong like Korean culture and history is Gyeongju. Gyeongju is about an hour away from Busan actually, so it's near the south side of the country. If you're interested in Korean cultural heritage, this is a great place to go because Gyeongju was actually the capital of Korea during the Silla dynasty. There's a lot of temples, historical treasures, and also royal tombs in the area, so it is often referred to as the museum without walls because it just, the whole city embodies so much of the history that every corner that you turn, there's something there to see and something to learn. Now, if you're already traveling all the way to Gyeongju, I would highly recommend that you take some time to also visit Busan. It's the second largest city within South Korea. It is a port city, so it's all the way to the south. I absolutely love Busan. This last time that I went to Korea for 2 months, I actually spent a whole 5 weeks in Busan. What I love so much about the city is that it has almost everything a big city like Seoul has, but it somehow also embodies the like attitude and mindset of a seaside village, so it has like kind of like chill vibe to it too. One of the funniest things is everyone that I meet in Busan, they always complain about how people in Seoul like move too fast, and it's like they're always in a hurry. After having been accustomed to how people are in Busan, when I went back to Seoul, I definitely felt that things felt more rushed and like life was just a lot busier for no reason. Busan definitely holds a special place in my heart. If you want to know more about what there is to do in Busan, I can also make another video on that. Just make sure you make a comment down below to let me know if that's something you're interested in. Even though it is a big city, it's not quite as worldly or international as Seoul is. People retain a lot more of their cultural identities there. There's a lot more to learn about the history from the people themselves. The last place I would recommend that you visit if you have the time is to visit Jeju-do. And this is a place that has been on my own personal wish list for the longest time. The reason why I haven't personally visited Jeju-do is because from what I have heard and what I have read, the public transportation in Jeju-do is actually not that great. So the best way to get around is to actually either have a taxi guide or to rent a car and drive around yourself. While I do have an international driver's license and I can do that, it just seems like a lot of effort for myself. I would much rather go there with other people, so I would love to visit there with either family or friends to make the most out of that trip. The two things on my list that I would love to try in Jeju-do is black pork and halabom. So just a few things that you should definitely check out for me if you do go to Jeju-do. And bonus! So last time we talked about places that you can visit during the fall time to optimize your visit and to see the best views. Well, today I'm gonna give you some tips on things that you can do during the other seasons of the year. During the springtime, of course, there's cherry blossoms. So the best place to go cherry blossom viewing in Seoul is Yeouido Park, which is another park along the Hangang. However, be warned that when you go out, and this is something that you'll probably notice if you've been to Korea before or when you're traveling to Korea for the first time, is that the couple culture is really strong in Korea. They don't necessarily display any sort of PDA, but you can definitely tell that they're couples based off of their like outfits or just like them holding hands. You'll definitely see like a bunch of couples around. So it's even more apparent when you go to Yeouido during cherry blossom season. You'll see a bunch of girlfriends dragging their boyfriends to help them take pretty pictures or just to admire the blossoms. It is really pretty, so I do not blame them. Another thing during the spring is there's a Garden of Morning Calm Spring Festival. So the Garden of Morning Calm is actually on the outskirts of Seoul. You'll find a lot of different tours that combine the Garden of Morning Calm with like Nami Island or Petite France, but it's all kind of like a day trip kind of deal from Seoul. The Garden of Morning Calm is a privately owned garden that houses a ton of botanicals, and they actually have blooms all year round. We have going into like late spring, early summer. The Bampo Bridge has a rainbow fountain show that is only live during half the year, which is from May through October. This has been on my list of things to do for the longest time, but I never seem to get my timing right because last year that I went, the timing was right, but because of the pandemic, things were not operating regularly, so they actually didn't have their fountain show. They only restarted it this year, so I guess I just need to have to go back. The last thing that you can look forward to during the summer season actually is there's going to be a ton of festivals. So they have like the Water Bomb Festival, there's the Mud Festival, I believe, and also a ton of college festivals as well. And this is a great time to go if you are interested in K-pop or Korean music in general, because a lot of artists will be performing during these festivals, so it's a great opportunity to see all of your favorite artists all at once. I believe Ultra is also during summertime, and it is huge in Korea as well. Summer is not always the best time to visit South Korea because the summers are actually really hot and humid, and then it's also monsoon season during July, August. So I hope that this was a good supplement to your original list of things to do in Korea if you're looking for more things to bulk up that itinerary. If this is your second time or third time visiting Seoul, I hope this gives you a little bit more ideas on what you can do. I hope that this video was helpful to you in planning your trips, and I hope you safe and happy travels. I will see you next time. Bye! If you are interested in even more things because I have more. Be sure to like this video and subscribe because there will be more coming your way. And don't hesitate to leave a comment down below on what you would like to see from me next.